exhibit some control issues here. My name's Patrick. I'm an alcoholic, and thanks for that introduction, Stephen. I was certainly not put together when I got back here in 2015. That I can assure you. Stephen asked me yesterday. Time's a blur. If I would do this tonight, and the first thought was, yeah, I don't want to do this. But the second thought was, of course, we were in a meeting last night, and the topic was saying yes, sort of coupled with gratitude. And I was about 30 or 45 seconds into my share last night, and it just occurred to me that it would be absolutely ludicrous for me to say anything but yes to an AA request, as long as I'm able to do it. Because Alcoholics Anonymous has given me absolutely everything that I have today. Every relationship, every stitch of clothes, every appliance that I have at my job, absolutely everything that I have today as a result of being a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And really, I owe that to a lot of people in this room. I got here the first time in 2009. Spent 4 years here just kind of hanging around, warming a seat. That didn't last. I went out and then came back in 2015. And if there are some new people here in the room tonight, and if you don't hear anything else that I say, hear this, I hope, that Alcoholics Anonymous miracles happen here. I haven't needed or wanted a drink since I got back here. It has given me so much that it's, I could talk for an hour just about what I've gotten as a result of being sober. So stay. We say at the meeting, keep coming back. It's a lot easier to stay than it is to come back. So how did I get here? I took my first drink of alcohol when I was 14 years old. I was in a park in Chickasha, Oklahoma, with three of my very, very best friends. The reason I took a drink when I was 14 was because I couldn't get my hands on it any earlier. I wanted a drink a long time before I took one, and it isn't because my family drank. They did not drink. They were very religious. Actually, I'm taking my watch off here. My grandfather was a minister, and he took his watch off before he started preaching every Sunday morning because he knew that if it wasn't over by noon, people were just going to walk out because you don't make us late for lunch. But if I take that off there, I can see the time. Nobody in my family drank that I knew of. Later, it kind of occurred to me that I did have some black sheep uncles. But it was not allowed in my parents' home. It was not allowed in my grandparents' home. But I saw it on television, and I saw it in the movies, and it seemed like they were having a great time. It seemed like it was a glamorous thing to do, and it seemed like that's what grown-ups did, and it seemed like they were having fun, and I wanted to have fun so bad. I was a very, very anxious, angry child, and I think it comes from a lot of there's a lot of stuff packed into that. I don't talk about it a lot, but I came from a very abusive home. I was beaten at least once a week. That didn't make me alcoholic. My alcoholism took that and did some pretty special stuff with it. It made me hold on to it. It helped build some resentments that I kept for a long time, and it gave me some work to do when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember when I was a kid, I kind of looked around and I saw people doing stuff that seemed normal, and it seemed like they knew how stuff worked. It seemed like they knew how to make friends, how to be cool, how to do all the stuff that I wanted to do, but I just couldn't figure it out. There was this is an old line, and about half the people, maybe a fourth of the people in this room will get it. But there was a guy on the couch on the Johnny Carson show, and Bob Hope and somebody else was on the couch. Very cool, very famous, very funny. And there was a comedian, lesser known, and then Johnny Carson. And about halfway through his bit, he turns to Johnny Carson. He says, do you ever feel like the world's a tuxedo when you're a pair of brown shoes? And I'm the pair of brown shoes. I've always felt like I was the brown shoes. And I remember talking to my older brother when I was a kid, like, why can't I? Because my older brother was like this GQ, Mr. Cool. Everybody loved him. Why can't I be cool? I want to be popular. And he would tell me, everybody knows who you are. You're invited to every single party. You are popular, but I just couldn't connect to it. And that's the way I've been my whole life. I just haven't been able to connect in any way, really. But when I'm in the park with my 3 friends that day, and we've got this bottle of scotch that we had stolen from Todd's father's office, and we poured it in a big gulp glass with some Pepsi, and we started passing. I know that that's wrong today. I didn't know it at the time. We started passing that around, and by the time the second drink hit me, I felt the thing that alcohol does for me. I mean, it changed. When I say it changed everything, it changed absolutely everything. This anxiety-ridden, very angry, not really able to connect at all kid suddenly became free. Is the only word that I found that word here. I certainly wouldn't have said it then, but I found that word here. I just felt free. I didn't feel, all that stuff was gone. All the anxiety was gone. All of the, you're laughing at what I'm saying, but is it because you're laughing at me, or is it because what I'm saying is funny? And I don't know how you guys are doing this, all that's gone. And I'm just able to just be. And I didn't know how to just be until I took that drink. And so because of the effect that it had on me that day, I drank from then on. By the time I'm a junior in high school, I'm a daily drinker. Every morning, junior in high school, first hour Spanish, Senora Hutchison said that you can bring a drink to class. So I brought a screwdriver. It seemed like it made sense to me. And nobody else was drinking in class, and I didn't understand why nobody else was doing this. Because what it did for me, like, why wouldn't you want to feel like this all the time? It didn't make sense to me that nobody else was doing it. And so by 9 a.m. on my junior year of high school, I'm about half lit. And I loved it. It made life so much easier for me. And there were really no consequences. I aced that class. I aced most of my classes. I was an athlete. I kind of had to be because my brother was. So he lettered in 3 sports in 3 years, so I had to letter in 4 sports in 4 years. But booze didn't get in the way of any of that. It was I could just keep on keeping on, and it just seemed normal to me. I go off to college early. I was 17, and that's when my first consequences hit. I went to the University of Oklahoma and drank my freshman year. That's really kind of all I did. I didn't really go to any classes or anything like that. My GPA was in the neighborhood of 1, and that's much lower than it's supposed to be, apparently. I learned later, and my parents were not having any of that, and they said, no, you're not going back there. And they made me go to this little school in our hometown in Oklahoma, and that was my first consequence. And the only thing I learned from that was that I've got to learn how to drink better. I've got to learn how to get what I need to exist in me, but yet keep those people off my back. And so that's the that relationship with alcohol kind of shifted then, because I really didn't know how to live without it. And I kind of got it together. I figured out how to do that. I figured out how to keep them off my back, made the grades, found a girl, got married because that's what I was supposed to do. And that marriage did not work. Imagine that. And I honestly did not know. I don't know if the signs were there. There were signs that I should not have been with a female person. But I didn't get it. I don't know if it was suppressed because we were so religious or whatever. But I didn't get it until after we were divorced, and I was in a cubicle in my office one day, and the people next to me were talking about this bar called Concessions in Tulsa, which is where I was. And I was like, they were talking about this bar, and they were saying things that I had never heard about a bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There were gay people there. And I was like, I should probably go check this bar out. And I got out the phone book and I turned the yellow pages and I looked up bar or nightclub or whatever it was. I looked up and found Concessions, and that Friday night I went there, and it freaked me out. I walked in and boys were dancing with boys and guys had their shirts off and they were up on the boxes dancing, and I was there for maybe 15 minutes and freaked out and I left. The next weekend I was right back there again, and it wasn't that bad. I kind of liked it. I had just left law enforcement not long before then. I was 26 years old, and I was a young looking 26 years old and in decent shape, and I got a lot of attention, and I really liked it. And back then, that bar actually ended up getting closed because there was a shooting. Some straight people shot a gay person, and then there was some gay bashing out on the sidewalk out in front. The press and the police called it bar fights. But it was gay bashing, and because it was not safe at all to be gay in public in Oklahoma. But I would walk through those doors and shut the doors behind me, and I felt the freeness of being in a place where I could be myself, and I felt the freeness that alcohol gave me. And then I found some other stuff, like I walked in the restroom one night with some friends, and they pulled out a little baggie, and they said, "Hey, give us your key," because I had a key that was it was very wide, kind of like a spoon. They stuck the key in the baggie, and they stuck it up to my nose, and they held one nose, one side shut, and they said, "Sniff," and I did, and they did the other side of the nose, and it burned, and it didn't taste good going down the back of my throat, and I said, "That's disgusting. What the hell just happened to me?" And I walked out the door and took 2 or 3 steps, and I was drunk when I went in, falling down, drunk. 2 or 3 steps, I didn't seem like I was drunk anymore, and I kind of felt like maybe that bar was mine. Maybe I owned that bar, and maybe all those people were my very best, closest friends, and they were all at my party, and I had to talk to absolutely everyone and tell them very funny stories over and over and over and over again. And 20 minutes later, I was back in that bathroom looking for more of that stuff. And so that kind of launched that career. And that's kind of where my life just went. The next few years, 26 to 30, I was 27 by then, 27 to 31, 32, I was in the bar every night that it was open. I found circuit parties, and I found party drugs. And there for a while, I thought that I didn't drink during that period, but that's a lie. We drank all the time. We drank during the day. We didn't drink while we were doing those drugs, but we drank all the rest of the time. My life became that. I was just this circuit kid that was a grown man, and just traveling from city to city, spending all my money, being a complete fool. And after about 2 or 3 years of that, we went to Chicago for 2 days, ended up staying 5, and I was at the end. I had used all my money. I had no clients left. I had no income left. I had no money left. But I made the very intelligent decision to go to Chicago and just spend all the rest of it. And so I spent 5 days there doing everything I could possibly do, and went back to Tulsa 5 days later with absolutely nothing. I no longer had a place to live. I'd lost everything except a car. I had clothes in that car. For some reason, I still have the 19-inch TV that I had in college. I don't know why I still had that, but I still had 19-inch Toshiba color TV that I bought at Foley's. And I had that, and that's all I had. I knew then that I had to stop something. Something had to change. And I knew that the drugs were a real problem. And I knew that if I stayed in Tulsa, I was not going to be able to stay off of those. So I made the decision to move to Dallas. So what could go wrong? Nothing bad happens in Dallas. But I moved to Dallas, and I kind of knew one person. And when I moved to Dallas, I moved with that car, those clothes, that television, and $127 and some change. I didn't have a job when I got here, but that's all I had in the world. I kind of knew one guy from the circuit down here, had his number anyway, and I called him. It was pre-texting. Called him and said, "So what do you do on a Tuesday night in Dallas?" He said, "Well, you go to the Hideaway Bar." And I was like, "Okay, I'll see you there." And so I came to Dallas, but here I was. Absolutely nothing had changed. I was still here, and I was still a drunk. And so I went to the bar, and absolutely nothing changed. Because as soon as I got drunk, I started finding the other stuff. God kind of introduces me to Alcoholics Anonymous around this time. I knew that Alcoholics Anonymous was a thing. I saw it on television. I saw it in movies. I heard about it. It's out there. But I was in JR's one night, which is a bar over here on Cedar Springs, and came across this guy that had moved down here from Tulsa. I didn't even know that he was here. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I lied. I'm an alcoholic still. A practicing alcoholic. So I lied and said, "I'm down here interviewing for positions. I'm staying in a hotel in North Dallas." The reality was I was in a pay-by-the-week hotel, and I had 3 days left, and then I was complete broke. He said, "Oh, no, that's ridiculous. Don't stay in a hotel. Come stay with me. I've got plenty of room." I was like, "Oh, are you sure? Are you sure?" And inside I'm thinking, thank God, because I was going to have to sleep in my car. And so I did that. I stayed with him for a little bit, which turned into 3 months. But he had a boyfriend who was there a lot, and his boyfriend didn't drink alcohol. He always had a bottle of water or Red Bull. And his boyfriend had a friend who was very cute. And his boyfriend didn't drink, and I found out that they were alcoholics, and they went to AA. And I thought, well, that's very good for them. They probably need that. But it was my first introduction to people that were sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. They were fun, and they seemed normal, and they had a good time, but they didn't drink, and that was just very, very odd to me. In that same bar, maybe 2 weeks later, walking through the bar, and this guy comes along and clotheslines me in the throat on purpose. And so we were together for a couple of years because he drank like I drank. And that's what we did for 2 years. And there's really nothing spectacular about my drinking career. I just drank a lot. I drank too much. I drank all the time. I drank until I passed out every night. Toward the end of that stint, I drank two or three bottles of wine every night. Sometimes some bourbon, sometimes some vodka, but it was absolutely every night. And I would fall asleep on the couch, and then get up and go to work the next morning. It sounds very depressing, because it was very depressing. He and I broke up, and I decided that I was going to write a book. This morning's meeting was on ego deflation at depth. I needed some of that. What the hell? I was 30, I don't know, how 34, 35 years old. I thought I was going to write a book. But But I knew I couldn't stay at home and write this book. I needed to go somewhere else because I was going to drink 2 or 3 bottles of wine and pass out, and I wasn't going to get anything done. So I started looking for a Starbucks to write this book from. And I live in East Dallas at the time, and I go to this Starbucks and that Starbucks, and none of them are right, and this one has too many people and that one's too bright, and I'm Goldilocksing all these Starbucks until I find just the right one. And I end up way over here at the one over here on Lemon and Night. I don't even know how many Starbucks between that place and my house. But this is the one I end up at, and there were only like 4 or 5 people in there, but the parking lot was fairly empty. It was well lit. I was like, this is good. It's not too far from the bars in case I do get thirsty. So I'll just go in there and I'll write. But there are this group of guys in the corner, and they're nice looking guys. They're funny. They're having a great time. And I was intrigued. And I go back night after night after night. We start talking. One night they leave, and we've had conversations up to this point. And I said, so where are you guys going? Thinking they're headed to the bar. And they said, we're going to a meeting. And I was like, what kind of a meeting do you have this late at night on a weeknight? And they said, oh, it's an AA meeting. We're sober. There's a place called Lambda, and we're going there to an 11 o'clock. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just kind of turned back to my laptop. I just went back to work because I certainly was not ready to hear any of that. But these guys, I was enamored, intrigued, because I didn't have this language then, but I have the language now. They had something that I wanted. I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't know what it was. But whatever it was, I wanted it. And at that time, I had no idea how to get it. And so I just kept going back. And the same Starbucks one evening after work, I go, and it's like 5:30 in the afternoon. And I get there, and it is not the 4, 5, 6 people that are usually there later at night. It is packed. It is wall to wall people, standing room only. People out on the sidewalk on the tables out there, and they have books like this open and 2 people to a table, and their notebooks are out, and some people are writing and some people are talking. And I go inside the Starbucks, and people are seemingly talking in code. Are you going to the 6? No, I'm going to the 8. How many days do you have? Oh, I got 30 days. Are you getting your chip? Like, what chip? What 6? What are you people talking about? None of this makes any sense, but they were all having so much fun. And so I went back now after work instead of late at night. And it started this sort of, like Stephen, when he introduced me, he said I kind of started just auditing AA from that Starbucks, which back then was called either Gay Bucks or Sober Bucks. And because that's all it was all AA people all the time. And so I was just drawn to that place all the time, because those people had something I wanted. And so eventually all my friends are, I have two sets of friends. I have a small set of friends that I drink with, and I have all these friends who are sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've got this sort of bifurcated life of this. I go out on the weekends, but I've got to get at Starbucks by 8 a.m. on Saturday morning because those guys are going to be there. And they'd all be there bright-eyed and sober and talking. I'd come in sort of red-eyed and hungover, but I needed it. I didn't know what it was. And then finally, I'd had enough because I'm still drinking the same way I'd always been drinking. And I saw you guys, and you guys had some way to not live like I was living. And I finally got to the point where I talked to one of the guys there who sponsored like 15 people at the time. I was like, I think I might need to go to one of those meetings. And he said, we were wondering how long it was going to take, because it had been like 2 or 3 years. I am not, I'm a quick learner in some areas, but not necessarily when it comes to this stuff. And And so he took me to my first meeting. It was a Sunday afternoon meeting at 1:00 over at Lambda, and I have no idea who was there because I think I looked at the tile on the floor the entire meeting. I have absolutely no idea what was said. I know that they called for somebody whoever wants a desire chip at the end, and Randy elbowed me, and which meant go get a desire chip. And I went up and I got one, and I sat down and I said, "I'm Patrick. I'm an alcoholic," for the first time. And started on this path. Now, here's what I will say about those first 4 years, and I can cover them very quickly. I came into AA and I hung around. I was not interested in really. I went through the steps with Randy, and when I say I went through them, I sort of grazed them. I did a fourth step, and I made some amends. I took care of like the big stuff with my family, exes, that kind of stuff, and then rolled those steps up and just stuck them on the shelf. I honestly don't know that I ever picked up my big book again after that. Maybe I did. I certainly never read it through. I read bits and pieces here and there because I would chair meetings. But I had no desire to change because I didn't think I really needed to. When I got here the first time, I got here because I thought I should stop. I thought I ought not to drink. And that, as it turns out, for me, is not enough. I did not get that first step all the way. I read I heard you guys talk about, and I read some in here about, gates of insanity or death and all this stuff that sounds very, very dramatic. And I felt sorry for you if that was the case for you. But it certainly wasn't the case for me. I just needed to not drink, and it felt like as long as I was coming to meetings and had a few commitments, that things were going okay. But I didn't change. I was really interested. I was the same guy. I was not necessarily perfectly honest, and it was not a picture of great sobriety. I can tell you that. And so what that got me was it got me drunk, because what I know for me today is that if I don't not only work these steps, but make them a part of my life, how I live my life, I will absolutely drink again. There is no question that if this isn't how I address the world, I will eventually not be okay. I will not find happiness, and I will have to drink, because there's only two ways for me. I can either find happiness and joy in Alcoholics Anonymous, or I can find some way to escape. And for me, that's with a drug or a drink. And so I went out in 2013, and pride and ego. We had the meeting on ego this morning, and pride and ego are so dangerous for me. I think for probably most alcoholics, anybody that I've ever sponsored. Because when I went out, I got drunk that weekend on purpose, and nothing bad happened. It was okay. The very next week, I got drunk and browned out, blacked out, ended up in San Francisco. I was there for 4 days. Came to Tuesday, Wednesday-ish. I'm a partner at this time at a firm here in Dallas, and where's Patrick? Now, because I'd been sober for 4 years, and none of this hadn't happened. Where's Patrick? And make my way back to Dallas. It takes me another 2 days to recover from that, and I realized that shouldn't have gone out. I shouldn't have done this. This is a very bad idea. But my pride and ego kept me out. I could not come back here and say I was wrong. I could not come back here and say I am an alcoholic. I couldn't admit defeat. I could not surrender. And it took me 2 years and a lot of drinking. And I was, things would, the calendar would just keep going, and Memorial Day would come around, and I knew a lot of you guys were at the Big D Roundup on Memorial Day, and I was doing what my friends were doing, and I wanted to be there at the Big D Roundup, but I couldn't. I knew you guys were having fun. I knew you were sober. I knew you were happy. I was miserable, but I couldn't get back. I finally ended up attempting suicide in November of 2014. That wasn't even enough. I wrapped a belt around my neck, hung myself, and the belt broke, and I fell to the floor. The only reason I'm here today is because that belt broke. Ended up on some lovely medication for people who do that sort of thing, but I was still miserable. It couldn't make me happy, and I was in a car one afternoon on a Sunday. Actually, it was January 11th, 2015, and I just looked up in the rearview mirror, and I can't remember if I said it out loud or just thought it, but whatever it was why doesn't life work? Why can't I make life work? And I immediately got a thought that I'd probably heard in some AA meeting in the past, is that there's not a pill for alcoholism. And God comes back into the picture here. And I made a decision in that moment, in that second, that I am an alcoholic. I cannot do this. I am going back to AA tomorrow. There's a 6 o'clock Newcomer meeting at Lambda, and I'm going to go, and I'm just going to do it. And I went home, sat down with my partner who was nursing his hangover from the night before, and he said, "Can I go with you?" I said, "Sure." And so we both came went to our first meeting, my first meeting back, and his first meeting, January 12th of 2015. And Bradley was there, and Donald was there. He gave me my desire chip that night. And it was a small meeting. When I left, that meeting was huge. There were like 40 or 50 people in that meeting. When I came back, that meeting was really small. There were like 10 or 12 people in there. But it seemed like 7 or 8 of them had close to 20 years or more of sobriety in a newcomer meeting, because those people know that's where the newcomers are, and they knew that they needed to be there for the newcomers that come back or come in, and I was one of those that month. I'll say this too, there were probably 20 or 30 people that came in over the course of that month in 2015. There are 2 of us that are still sober. And unfortunately, that's just what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that I couldn't be one of those people that went back out, because I didn't have another one in me. So I got in and got all the way in. They used to say, and still say, come in, sit down, and sit all the way down. So I came in and sat down and sat all the way down. I got a sponsor within a few days. Sobriety day 7, he and I had our first meeting, and he said, "What do you think happened?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, that's what we're going to find out, so it doesn't have to happen again." And we launched into the steps, and he took me through this book, page by page, word by word, and we worked the steps exactly as they're written in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and it saved my life. Oh, that one always gets me. It saved my life. He took me through the first 3 steps really quickly, because I was in a lot of pain, and I was hurting pretty bad, and he knew that there was no time to wait. I needed to get into the solution, which is in the action steps. Step 1 was incredibly apparent I knew it. He knew it. Anybody that was near me, around me, knew it, that I was powerless over alcohol and my life was completely unmanageable. Attempted suicide is not something that someone does with a manageable life. So that one was super simple. We got to step 2 and he said, "Do you have a problem with God?" And I said, "I don't think so." He said, "Good. Step 3." And which is all step 2 is, because I still come to believe. I'm a little over 7 years in. My belief is still changing. My belief is still growing. God for me is not the same thing that God was for me 7 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 2 years ago, or last year. I have absolutely no idea what God is, and I don't care. It does not matter. All I know is there was a guy that used to go to the Newcomer meetings over at Lambda, and he would say, "I don't know what God is. I don't know where God is. I know that God is. God is, period, is a complete sentence." And that paragraph has stuck in my head for years now, because that's the way that I heard it, and it made sense to me. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not it. It's there. Get out of the way, which is step 3. I can't, God can, I think I'll let him. It's not my job. It's not my job to get me sober. It's not my job to get anybody else sober. My job is to do the steps that are here as they're described in here and get out of the way. And when I've done that, man, the miracles that have happened for me in Alcoholics Anonymous are incredible. Before I got here in 2015, I was a guy who drank bourbon every single day. I could not go more than a few hours without drinking. When there would be bourbon on the nightstand next to my bed, because when I woke up at 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was going to need more to be able to get back to sleep or pass back out. I would wake up shaking every morning. I could not stay sober. I could not drink. When I made the decision on January 11th, the desire to drink was gone. There's a thing called God's grace that I believe in, and I think that people in their first few weeks or months of sobriety are swimming in it. I know I was. There's no reason on this earth that I could not go more than a few hours without a drink on January 10th. But on January 11th, I went to bed that night without scotch on the nightstand, and I slept all night. And I woke up the next morning happy. I can't even tell you how long it had been since that had happened, because I knew I was coming home. So that's the first miracle, God's grace. I'm a very visual person, so I visualize this sort of wheel with an opening called Desperation, and another wheel with another opening called Willingness. And those, for me, they were always spinning, but they couldn't quite line up. But every once in a while, Desperation and Willingness will line up. And if I can get through that, when they're lined up, I've got a chance. And on the other side of that is God's grace. And I stayed in God's grace for some days, weeks, months, until the steps could work. Because I believe that this is what God gave me so that I could stay sober. God will hold my hand through you guys until I do this and let this work in my life. And so I decided to let that happen in step 3. I decided, step 1, yes, I don't have a problem with God. I need something to work for me the way it worked for my sponsor. And then he said, "Are you willing to do the work?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Great, step 4." And that was it. We did steps 1, 2, and 3 in a week and a half. over a series of meetings. And he showed me how to do the 4-step. He took me through the columns. He said, make a list of all the people you're pissed at, angry at, want to get back at, people that owe you an apology, put them down there. And so my list was fairly extensive. And then he said, go to column 2, and he said, go to column 3. But he did something with me that no other sponsor has ever done. There's an exercise. Some people call it the sick man exercise. Some people call it the forgiveness exercise. But it's between columns 3 and 4. And he said, we've got to get rid of these resentments. We got to find some way for you to learn how to forgive people. We got to find some way for you to not hold resentments against people, because those resentments that you have are going to kill you. And we read it in the book, and I believe the book, because it certainly never led me astray. And so we went through the sick man exercise. We went through all the people that I felt I could absolutely never forgive, because I didn't really know what forgiveness was. I thought forgiveness was, I'm going to be okay with what you did to me. I thought forgiveness was, you did this stuff to me, and I'm going to like you. And that's not what forgiveness was. We went through the dictionary, the 1913 Webster's dictionary, and so we're working with the same definitions that Bill Wilson was working with. And forgiveness was just me giving up my need to punish somebody for what they did. Can I get there? And if I can get there, then that resentment can kind of float away. My parents, my entire family, when I came out, disowned me. I haven't spoken to the vast majority of them. My little brother and I have exchanged emails over the last few years, but the rest of them I haven't spoken to since. My grandfather, the minister, said, you can go ahead and change your last name because I don't want a F word with my last name. And I can't forgive those people for that. I don't know how to let that go. But he took me through that exercise, and I found a way to see it as messed up as it is. I found a way to see it from their perspective, and I found a way to not need to punish them. And as time has gone on, I've learned the difference. I've discovered the difference between a memory and a resentment. I still remember it all, but it's just a memory. I don't need to punish them anymore. They are people that did a thing. It's in my past. It's no longer happening, and I don't need to punish them for it. And I'm free of it. I'm completely free of that. I mentioned abuse earlier. My older brother and I were fairly brutally beaten regularly. How do you let go of that? He took me through that exercise, and I found a way the book has given me a way to forgive that. And I'm free of that today. It happened. I remember it. But the vast majority of that pain is gone because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then I did my 5th step, and he showed me what my character defects are. I carried those into 6 and 7, and I did that prayer. And then I did my amends. And then I'm not going to say I started to change. The change started to happen, which is what an amend is. I began to change. And, as time has gone on, I'm almost out of time here. As time has gone on, I hope that it continues. I hope that it has. It's kind of hard for me to see it in myself. One of those guys that did stay sober when I got here, he doesn't come around much anymore, but it was so important for me to have somebody in the rooms that he got sober 7 days before I did. And when I couldn't see any sort of change in me, I could look across the room and I could see him, and he was getting better, because he was at least as crazy as I was, if not more. And if he was getting better, maybe I was. And we just sort of became these sort of satellites revolving around each other in Alcoholics Anonymous. We were never great friends, but we were in the same meetings and we could see each other. And man, that was that important for me. Steps 10, 11, and 12 are where I live today. Step 10 keeps that channel open between me and God. I have to have to keep that stuff clear. Step 11 is really, really important. It's I spend every morning 20 minutes plus quiet time, just me and God hanging out, which is, if you had told me I was going to do that when I got here, I would have said, you are an absolute nut. There is no way I am going to do. First of all, I can't sit there for 20 minutes quiet. I can't do it. But I was talking to another friend of mine who in AA that does the same practice. It's called centering prayer. And we talked about not long ago about how cool it is that we get to sit every morning with God, just me and God hanging out. And sometimes I get that intuitive thought that it talks about on pages 85, 86, 87. And sometimes I don't. But absolutely every time, it starts my day off on the right foot. If I don't do that, I find myself getting in trouble. I find myself getting in the way. My ego starts to spring up. Somebody says something that they shouldn't have said, or they're doing something the wrong way. So I can tell pretty quickly when I haven't done it. And I can stop my day anytime I want. I can stop my day anytime I want. That in the pause that it talks about in the book, and say, God, need your help, and just stop and get quiet. And the only thing that God, for me, the only thing that God really cares about is my intent. Do I intend to be self-centered, egotistical Patrick, or do I intend to be God-centered, service-oriented Patrick? And if I can be God-centered, service-oriented Patrick, life is a whole hell of a lot easier. Step 12 is kind of where I live as well. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous the first time in 2009, my sponsor said, service is not an option. It is what we do. If there's a business meeting, we go. If there's a group conscience meeting, we go. If somebody asks you to do something that you know how to do and you can do, you say yes. If you don't know how to do it and you think you can't, ask me and I'll tell you. And that, I love that. And to this day, I do not believe that service is an option in Alcoholics Anonymous. If somebody says, Patrick, will you? I need to have yes ready. Because it's the thing that keeps me grounded. It's the thing that keeps me a little bit closer to humility than I would ever be without it. It's the thing that keeps me closer to God. It's the thing that keeps me closer to you, which is the first place I ever heard God. The first time I ever heard God for me came out of your mouth. You said things from God that I needed to hear so that I could stay sober another day. Man. And I can't even tell you how grateful I am for that. When I got here, I was a wreck. Homeless, no money, no job, no car. Stephen would pick me up and say, when's the last time you went to a meeting? And he would say, get in the car, we're going. Or he would say, let's go to a movie. Because I had no way to get anywhere. Everything has changed. Everything I have today, I thought my career would never come back. I thought it was over. I own half of a company today with a former partner of that firm that I was at when I got fired for screwing up too many times. She and I started a company a few years ago. Clients have come back that I thought I would never work with before again. Life is not always cotton candy and unicorns and lollipops. Stuff happens. But as long as I stay here and stay with you guys and find some way to stay connected to God and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can find peace and serenity no matter where I am. I was homeless with no food, not knowing where my next meal was going to come from. But you guys showed me how to get peace and serenity even in the middle of that. I can feel the same way. I could feel the same way then that I feel today with absolutely everything. That's the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. This alcoholic had no idea how to be happy. I had no idea what okay was or how to be okay. But you've given me all of that. So thank you. That's all I have.